Hello, everybody. My name is Robert Stevens. I'm from Johns Hopkins University. It's my great pleasure to participate in World Coma Day. I would like to thank the organizers of this event, as well as the Neurocritical Care Society and the Curing Coma campaign. Today, I'm going to be talking about coma science, and in particular, the Coma Science Working Group, which was created by the Neurocritical Care Society Curing Coma campaign to ask some fundamental questions and develop some guidance on science in this area. So this Coma Science Working Group was launched at the end of 2019, again, under the auspices of the NCS Curing Coma campaign. The charge was to build a scientific foundation for effective treatment of patients with coma and other disorders of consciousness. So I'm extremely fortunate and privileged to co-chair this group with Dr. Michael Derringer from WashU in St. Louis. So the mission that we've been assigned is to define the unmet science in disorders of consciousness, to develop tools to address this unmet science, and to use those two things to create a blueprint for recovery in patients with coma and disorders of consciousness. Defining the unmet science, what does that mean? It means really understanding what are the gaps in knowledge, the unmet needs. It means also establishing a sort of hierarchy or priority amongst these different gaps and needs. Developing the tools to address the unmet science means thinking both in terms of conceptual advances, so things like information theory, data science, artificial intelligence, computational modeling. Also to think in terms of techniques such as imaging, high throughput biology, invasive and non-invasive neurophysiology, as well as analyzing longitudinal trajectories. And how do we create a blueprint? So at a very high level, we use these unmet needs and gaps to map onto deliverables. And deliverables could look like new treatments, new diagnostic methodologies, new prognostic methodologies, and new ways of thinking about how consciousness is lost in recovery. The methodology that we advocated from the beginning is quite simple. It's the so-called gap analysis. And what is a gap analysis? It means simply that we define the current state of the science, and we also define the desired state or where we want to be, and we develop pathways to connect the current with the desired, right? And so the key, of course, is the journey. How do we get from here to there? And as we will see, there are many, many different pathways that can be constructed in this paradigm. The Coma Science Working Group deliverables have included several things. The first, of course, is the creation of a global scientific group, or consortium. And this includes, without any doubt, some of the leading content experts on coma and disorders of consciousness. It's also included the several published white papers. These are the results of our gap analyses. It's included several symposia that we've held. In the future, we hope very much to develop a coordinated collaborative research program, bringing together many of the experts who've converged on coma science, and to obtain additional funding so we can pursue the research in this area. So the Coma Science Working Group has gone through several phases. We're currently in phase 2, but I'm just going to recap some of the elements of phase 1. This was led by 4 of my colleagues who are shown here. Dr. Melanie Boley, who led a group on biological mechanisms of coma and disorders of consciousness. A group led by Dr. Daniel Consella, who worked on a group thinking about taxonomy and classification. A group led by Dr. Flora Hammond, focused on prediction and trajectory analysis. and a group led by Dr. Brian Edlow, thinking about therapeutic interventions for patients with coma and disorders of consciousness. So this was the first iteration of the Coma Science Working Group, or Coma Science Working Group 1.0. These are 4 of the papers, white papers, that were published as a result of this work. As you can see, all of them appeared in the Neurocritical Care Society's journal, which is called Neurocritical Care, in the year 2021. In addition, the Coma Science Working Group had the opportunity to participate in 2 NIH-supported symposia, and these were held in 2021, and you can see these publications resulting from those, or the proceedings of those 2 symposia that are shown here, and happy to provide you with the references. These are extremely comprehensive documents summarizing the main findings that were evoked during these 2 symposia. We've now moved on to the second phase of Coma Science Working Group Phase 2. And here we have created 5 groups. There's a group led by Dr. David Chung, which is looking at preclinical modeling systems. A group with Dr. Jacobo Sitt, that is leaning on the question of computational models. A group led by Dr. Jan Klassen, which is examining the question of cognitive motor dissociation. A group led by Dr. Nico Schiff, which is working on brain-machine interfaces, and a group led by Dr. Jose Suarez, which is examining the question of designing clinical trials to treat patients with coma and disorders of consciousness. So the preclinical modeling group, whose work is ongoing, is really asking the question of what specific insights can be obtained in preclinical systems that will have a measurable impact in establishing a mechanistic account of disorders of consciousness in humans. And secondly, in improving the care and outcomes of humans with disorders of consciousness. So here, Dr. Chung and his group are examining whole animal systems, for example, in rodents or larger animals, thinking about also the use of tissue slices, and even the more recent advent of stem cell-derived 3-dimensional systems like organoids or cerebral organoids that can potentially be leveraged to gain insights on DOC. The computational modeling group led by Dr. Sitt has worked to develop a set of paradigms modeling approaches that can be used for disorders of consciousness. They've broadly separated this into biophysical models and statistical models. This diagram is an extract from a paper that is currently being prepared, summarizing the findings of this group on computational modeling. Some of the conclusions of the computational modeling group are these unmet needs or gaps. We need models that generalize across individuals and different etiologies of brain injury. We need models of recovery of brain function, recovery of consciousness. The models that we use need to be explainable, accountable, reliable. There's also, in this particular working group, discussion around specific modeling systems, such as the digital twin paradigm, which is illustrated here. You can see a digital twin is essentially a computational simulation of a real-world physical system. In this case, you could extract, for example, the EEG features of a population of individuals, let's say with disorders of consciousness, and then you can run through different simulations in a virtual space using statistical modeling and AI in particular. And then that information can be leveraged to potentially modify therapies for patients with disorders of consciousness. The cognitive motor dissociation group led by Dr. Jan Klassen. This is a diagram taken from the ongoing work of this group. the two principal methodologies that are being used currently to define or identify individuals who have a dissociation between their cognitive function, their awareness, and their motor responses. Those are primarily the computational analysis of the electroencephalogram, the EEG, versus the computational analysis of fMRI signals obtained in unresponsive patients. So this cognitive motor dissociation group is thinking about CMD as a state where, again, there is a disconnect between behavioral responsiveness and cognitive function. They recognize that there is a need for mechanistic epidemiological and outcomes data to better determine and define whether the classification of disorders of consciousness needs to be modified and refined in light of this new subtype of unresponsive patient. The group led by Dr. Nico Schiff on brain-machine interfaces is working to identify the clinical and technical gaps towards the employment of brain-computer interfaces, or BCI, in patients with disorder of consciousness. The group is hoping to provide some recommendations of how to prioritize future research using BCI in both adults and in children, and in both the acute setting, for example, in the intensive care unit, all the way to the chronic care setting in rehabilitation and beyond. So they're planning to propose a roadmap for assessing readiness for brain-computer interfaces and to produce a comparative discussion of different brain-computer interface solutions, going from invasive to non-invasive and from adult to pediatric. This is a diagram taken from the work that's in progress. You can see that different criteria that can be used to determine whether a given patient is potentially ready and susceptible to brain-computer interface technologies or not. And then finally, the design of clinical trials led by Dr. Jose Suarez. So the goal here is to improve and optimize how clinical trials are designed so that they can maximize the likelihood of finding effective treatments, considering novel trial strategies, including adaptive trial designs that rely on biomarkers or clinical responses so that clinical trial populations can be enriched. And they're making recommendations on how these trials can be designed and implemented in the future. So in terms of next steps, Dr. Derringer and myself are actively thinking about the Coma Science Working Group third phase, or 3.0. We've collected some ideas from the research community, and we're hoping to put together a comprehensive plan that will be examined by the Curing Coma campaign as a new set of areas for these Coma Science Working Groups to think about in terms of defining the science in the future. So in summary, I hope I've been able to give you a sense that this is a vibrant group, the Coma Science Working Group. It's allowed for convergence of many experts from across the world to develop. It's also allowed the use of a very simple, workable methodology. The different groups have uncovered some important gaps, both theoretical and clinical gaps in our understanding of DOC. And it has provided some recommendations for research, which collectively represent a kind of roadmap for disorders of consciousness research and care. An important thing to emphasize is that this work has only just begun. We think that potentially the Coma Science Working Group is going to perpetuate itself in multiple iterations, illustrating the very dynamic and complex nature of these disorders. So with that, I would like once again to thank the World Coma Day and the organizers of this event, of the Curing Coma campaign, for inviting me. And I look forward to interacting with many of you now and in the future. Bye-bye.